Benny Goodman and his longtime rival Artie Shaw are probably the two greatest and best known white clarinetists in the history of jazz. Both men achieved huge commercial and critical success during their respective careers. It was Goodman, however, who would forever be identified with the title King of Swing for his role in the invention of the most popular jazz subgenre during the height of the music's popularity. Benny Goodman was born in Chicago, Illinois in 1909. His parents were Jewish immigrants from the Russian Empire who struggled to provide for their large family. Despite the family's relative poverty, David Goodman arranged for music lessons for three of his sons, including Benny. These lessons took place at a local Chicago synagogue. After a year's training, Benny Goodman, aged 11, joined a boys' club band and received further musical training from the club's director, and later from a classically trained clarinetist. With this solid foundation, Goodman would launch a career that would span 7 decades and would span musical genres from early classic jazz to classical music. Goodman began his jazz career as a clarinetist in the Ben Pollock Orchestra at the age of 16. He would make his first recording with the Pollock Orchestra in 1926. He would continue performing and recording with the Pollock Orchestra and its various offshoots until 1929. During this frenetic period, Goodman also recorded with nationally known bands of the likes of Ben Selvin, Red Nichols, and Ted Lewis. He also recorded under his own name with trombonist Glenn Miller and others as Benny Goodman's Boys. In the early 1930s, John Hammond of Columbia Records arranged for Goodman to record in the company of other stellar jazz musicians in a jazz all-star band. Other members of the band included pianist Teddy Wilson and drummer Gene Krupa, two musicians that would form the core of the rhythm section of Goodman's later orchestra. In 1935, Goodman expressed interest in appearing on national-wide radio dance music show Let's Dance. At the advice of John Hammond, Goodman secured swinging arrangements of songs from Fletcher Henderson, leader of New York's best jazz orchestra. These arrangements helped make Goodman a hit with the West Coast audience that heard his performance. On the strength of the Let's Dance performance and the rave reviews of Goodman's recordings of King Porter Stomp and Sometimes I'll Be Happy, a large and enthusiastic crowd of young fans were waiting in Oakland, California when the band played a show there in August of 1935. When the Goodman Band began to play, the crowd went wild. The same reaction greeted the band in Los Angeles during the debut of a 3-week engagement at the Palomar Ballroom in August 1935. During the 3-week engagement, the Jitterbug Dance was born, and along with it, the swing era. In the wake of the tremendous success of the Goodman Band in California, Fletcher Henderson disbanded his great orchestra and became Goodman's full-time arranger. With the addition of Henderson and pianist Teddy Wilson, both African Americans, Goodman's band became the first racially integrated jazz band in America. Goodman would later add another African American musician, the great Charlie Christian, on guitar. Goodman was coined the King of Swing in 1937 and was secured as such when his orchestra became the first jazz band to play New York City's Carnegie Hall in 1938. The concert, which included members of Count Basie's and Duke Ellington's orchestras, was a true test for jazz music as an art form. If the highbrow Carnegie Hall set could be moved by jazz, the music would earn a much-needed stamp of approval from the music establishment. After an uninspired start, the Goodman Orchestra slowly built momentum and climaxed with an epic version of Sing, 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 featuring spectacular solos by Goodman and pianist Jess Stacy. In 1939, John Hammond introduced the electric guitarist Charlie Christian to Goodman as a prospective band member. Despite initial doubts, Goodman was greatly impressed with Christian's playing and included him in the Benny Goodman Sextet for the next 2 years. The sextet recordings with Christian included these recordings: Rose Room, Breakfast Feud, and Grand Slam. These recordings are some of the finest recordings in the history of jazz. Goodman continued to have tremendous success as a big band leader until the mid-1940s, when swing music began to lose steam. Goodman flirted with bebop music and even formed a bebop band before finally denouncing this music. In 1949, at the age of 40, Goodman turned his back on jazz to devote himself to the study of classical music. Following a lengthy retirement from jazz, Goodman died of a heart attack in 1986. A plethora of fine recordings are available for Goodman's recordings at various phases of his career, including the fine 4-volume collection Chronological Classics, Benny Goodman and His Orchestra from 1996, while the famous 1938 Carnegie Hall Jazz Concert Volumes 1 and 2 from 1950 is one of the finest live recordings of popular music ever made.